Good evening, everybody. Special edition of the Unique Peace podcast. I am Janice. I am your host. I am an Reiki master and intuitive medium here on Long Island. And I'm so excited for my next guest. Her name is Carleigh Burns, and she is a holistic mental health and wellness coach who helps people overcome depression and anxiety without medication. So join me in welcoming Carleigh. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Now, I know you live in Australia, but can you tell us how you landed there?
Yeah, I sure can. So I came down here to travel just about 6 months after I had graduated from university. I landed Earth 2020. And about a week later, borders closed and we went into lockdown. And, everybody back home was like, "Are you coming back? What's your plan?" And I was like, "I made it. I'm in. I'm here." And never intended to stay. I was planning on coming for a year to a year and a half. And then my plan was to go up to Europe and do my master's and eventually make my way back to Canada, where I'm from. And, got here, circumstances changed, COVID happened, ended up meeting my Australian partner about 10 months later and have never looked back. So I'm in the process of getting dual citizenship and staying down here for the long haul.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, one thing that I do love about your story is you have spent some time living in a van. Do you currently live in a van?
I do. I do live in a van. You can't tell from my fake background.
And what is that like? Do you feel that it's given you a new sense of freedom, or has it helped overcome the mental anxiety and depression you yourself have overcome?
So, van life is something I've been doing for quite a long time. I've spent more time living in vehicles than in houses for the past 5 years, purely by choice. I am someone who has a lifestyle that's completely based around healing. And of course, that has to do with overcoming anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder as well. And so much of that is based around being in nature, having access to adventure, spending my days doing what I want to do and not, working a regular 9 to 5 job that is not conducive to my healing journey. So living in a van really gives me access to being in the bush, being close to nature, traveling when I want to. This right now is actually the first time that I've done van life while being in one place. So at the moment, I am in a local area, plan on being here for the year, my partner and I in our van. Every other time that I've done van life, it's been a lot more about traveling and exploring. And this time it's more about still having that access to nature and getting to live our lifestyle the way we want to, but we're wanting to root in and have that solid community and that solid sense of grounding in one place. But even as I'm speaking, just out my window, I can see the ocean. Like which is just such a blessing to get to wake up to an ocean sunrise every morning. I highly recommend van life and that style of both travel and just living in general.
And that I love that. I don't know if I would be able to do that. My son and I have like, hey, let's rent an RV, and he's looking at me like, no. Now, when I was much younger, my grandparents had a motorhome, they had an RV, they had a lake house, they had all of that, and they're up in Minnesota, so not far from Canada. I think border.
Yeah.
um, so that I find that beautiful and brave, incredibly brave, and just that the the bravery it comes in is just like, this is what I'm going to do, and let's see where it takes me. I love that. Now, I would love to hear a little bit of your journey and your story on how you became a holistic mental health coach. What led you
Yeah.
down that road?
So that is a very long story that, of course, I will try and shorten because it's essentially my life story. But mental health, I've been on a mental health journey essentially my entire life. My darkest days, my deepest depression was back when I was 12 years old and actually planned on ending my own life. Nobody around me had any idea. My friends at school, my parents, my teachers, my siblings, nobody knew that I was so deeply struggling. And I didn't know that it wasn't normal to plan on, on acting on those thoughts. So over the years, thankfully, I didn't act on it. And I'm so grateful for my younger self for never actually taking action on those plans. From there, my anxiety and depression morphed into disordered eating and substance abuse and just really crippling anxiety. I used to suffer from panic attacks near daily throughout high school. And again, somehow nobody knew. I would just always hide it. I'd run to the bathroom or I would be in my bedroom or whatever would happen. It would just, nobody had any idea that I was struggling so deeply. When I was 18, I finally received my first diagnosis, which at the time was ADHD. And at this point, I had experienced anxiety and depression. I was studying psychology and biology at that time. And so I knew in reflection that that was something I had struggled with. But ADHD had never crossed my mind. I had no idea what even that was at the time. And so the doctor said, you'll be fine. Take these medication and go about your life. And it really did not sit well with me. This idea that I had this mental diagnosis, that I had to take medication every day to try and feel normal. I really struggled accepting that about myself. Now, just before my diagnosis, about 4 months prior, as I was graduating high school, my dad was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so when I received my diagnosis of ADHD, it became my biggest fear in the world that I might also have bipolar. And it's worth mentioning that my dad and I didn't get along while I was growing up. That definitely contributed to the mental health I experienced as a child and to not feeling that love and really wanting validation from males, which I experienced with, the body dysmorphia and eating disorders. I always wanted to look a certain way to attract men because I didn't get that love from my father when I was growing up. And I can talk about this very openly because he and I have mended our relationship. And now, he's one of my best friends in the world and he's done a lot of his own individual healing. I've done a lot of my own healing. So we've been able to come together and heal that relationship. But when I received this diagnosis, it became my biggest fear that there might also be this bipolar looming in the background and that I might someday have a relationship with my future children that resembled that of mine and my father's. That was really scary to me. And when I was 19, so about not even a year after my ADHD diagnosis, I was about to head to New Zealand on exchange. My first time out of North America. I was so incredibly excited. And I experienced my first and only episode of mania. So that confirmed that I do have bipolar. And it was like I had just faced my biggest fear in the world. And I found that I was absolutely fine. And that the way that my brain works was not going to change me into some different person. It wasn't going to change me into someone who was angry or aggressive or lashed out because that was never me. And at this point, I kind of realized I had three choices. I could do nothing and continue of life, flowing in and out of depressive episodes, struggling with anxiety, having next to no confidence. I could take the doctor's recommendations and, take the medication and potentially need it every day for the rest of my life, which, having already trialed ADHD meds for about a month, I decided that was not the way I wanted to go. Or I could find an alternate way to truly heal. So, of course, that's what I did. And I always knew at this stage, I was like, the medication's there. If I want it, I'm going to do everything I can to try and avoid that route and see if I can find another way. So, went on a really deep dive of healing. I still went to New Zealand on exchange. And because I had just faced my biggest fear in the world and I was totally fine, I became obsessed with facing my fears and with pushing my comfort zone and expanding that area. So I started doing all these things that scared me, like learning how to ski. And yes, I'm from Canada and I didn't learn how to ski until I went to New Zealand and was 20 years old, but that's just part of my journey.
Don't feel bad.
So,
I grew up in Colorado and still don't ski. So it's all
oh,
good.
no way. I'm not the only one.
Yep.
That's funny. Yeah, and just started doing all these things. Like it was skiing, it was rock climbing, and I did my yoga teacher training that year. And I even shaved my head just because I was like, this is going to suck. And I want to experience this discomfort and like release the attachment I have to my hair. I was just on this really deep dive of prioritizing my mental wellness and my personal growth. I started really prioritizing my sleep, which meant I had to stop going to the bar until 4 a.m. and drinking with my friends. I'd still go to the bar and I'd be there until, 11 p.m. and I'd have one drink instead of 10. And then I'd go home and get a good sleep and wake up the next morning and prioritize moving my body in nature and doing these things that I knew were actually good for me. Helpful that I was studying neuroscience at the time. I was doing a double major in biology and psychology. So I took a lot of neuroscience courses while I was down there and was truly applying what I was learning to my life. And quite a short amount of time later, I was there for a year. I came home, and at some point during my 4th year of uni, I realized that I hadn't experienced a deep depression since that episode of mania. I hadn't experienced another manic episode either. And anxiety no longer ruled my world the way that it once did. So I started to realize I was onto something. And having witnessed my dad struggle for so many years before he received his diagnosis, he was 57 at the time, and he struggled for years before that. And me being only 21 at that point, and having started to figure out how to live with unmedicated bipolar disorder and that it was possible, I knew that it was my calling to show others how to do this and that it is possible. So it still took me quite a long time. It was another 6 years before I actually decided to step into this calling and, release the imposter syndrome and start showing up for the people who need my work. But now that's what I do. And I absolutely love it. Working as a holistic mental wellness coach, which is, a title that I came up with myself as well, because, essentially, I show people how to bring in this whole lifestyle-based approach to healing your mind and how interconnected our minds, bodies, and spirits are, and how every action that you take within a day is either contributing to lifting you up or to bringing you down, and how you can use these to keep yourself balanced. So that's ultimately a little snapshot of my journey and what brought me to the work that I do today.
That is a great and amazing journey. Because there are so many people that rely on the meds. I mean, my son was diagnosed with ADHD around 7 or 8, and I was very adamant that no, he's 17 now and he's still no meds. I mean, he has a concentration issue. We're working through all of that, but
Mm-hmm.
I was very adamant that he doesn't need that. I'm not against medication when it's necessary, but I think that that would hinder him more than help him. And for me and my generation, I'm seeing all the kids that were on Ritalin and we didn't know what it was doing. And I have a
Mm-hmm.
friend, one of my best friends, her husband is a psychiatrist, a neuropsychiatrist. He sees the brain x-rays and MRIs
Mm-hmm.
of people my age, and I'm in my 40s, who are on Ritalin and their brains are Swiss cheese. So I am of the same mindset. If you can do it without meds, do that first. So I commend you for that. Say good job, because you know it's there if you ever need or want, and
Yeah,
that want and need has to be greater than something else, and you're finding other things to heal that, and I love that. So thank you for showing it as possible, first and foremost.
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
And it seems to have brought you a lot of peace, which is why we are here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you, Carleigh, define peace personally? How do you define it?
So peace is a very internal experience to me. Peace is about, finding that inner peace within your mind, within your body, that space of calm and contentment almost. Um, it's releasing the worry, the overthinking, the what ifs, the should haves, and being fully present in the moment and at peace. I'm trying, it's hard to not use the word peace to define peace, but
Yeah, it's
at
like not
ease, I
using
suppose, with
not at ease. Yes.
yeah, finding that ease of your own mind and of your own life. And I'm a big believer that the world we witness around us is a reflection of what is going on inside of us. So to witness peace externally needs to begin with cultivating peace and this feeling of ease and relaxation within us.
Very true. That is very true on so many levels, and it's all about helping ourselves get there. So, what do you
Mhm.
do to find peace? What are ways that you find that inner calm, that peace, that ease, as it is?
So much of my life is based around finding that inner peace and, quieting my mind and um, returning to my true essence. And sometimes the things that you do aren't necessarily like, they don't look peaceful from an outside perspective. Like I move my body a lot if I'm experiencing anxiety or turmoil or overthinking something. I find exercise is a beautiful way to come back to that level of calm and just like move those emotions through, work it out, and then come back and afterwards. A lot of it is, spending time in nature, like we talked about, van life and connecting with nature. I feel such deep peace and contentment when I'm just deeply immersed in nature and away from, the hustle and bustle of a city. I don't live in a city anyways. I live in a fairly small area, which is beautiful. But I do find when I go into a big city like Sydney isn't too far away from where I live, I find it quite overwhelming, all of the sounds and the sights and the stimulus and the smells. And I don't tend to feel very peaceful when I'm in places like that. But then when I can remove myself and go into nature or go to a yoga class or do something that is very intentionally slow and calm, my mind just calms right back down and I can find again that inner peace and calm and try to maintain that for as long as possible.
And that, what are some of your favorite ways? I know you listed all the ways that you find peace. What would be
Mm,
your number one pick? What would you say that is my always go to, or that's the one I gravitate in my top three?
nature, connection with nature.
So what does that look like?
Yeah.
White
So
walks.
yeah, actually more lengthy walks. I enjoy really deep nature immersion. So like multi-day hiking where I'm going into places that you can only access by foot. Um, I like to highline. So highlining is slacklining, walking on webbing, but hundreds of meters in the air. So I'm in front of over cliffs and in front of waterfalls and those sorts of things. And the peace that you feel when you're doing these things, where you're putting yourself into situations where you're challenging your nervous system and it's going to be scary, and that's the whole point. But the whole point of it is to try and find calm in that space of discomfort. I've never felt such profound peace or flow as I do when I'm calmly walking on a high line in space where my body is learning to be okay because of that inner peace that I'm able to cultivate. Um, so I find really like the peace comes after working through that turmoil, and whether that's like a long hike and you're really pushing your body in place that's just deeply in nature and it's um it's silent of city sounds, but not silent of the sounds of waves or birds or whatever sorts of wildlife and wind are moving around. The deep, intense peace that you can feel there, where you're just so present and immersed in nature, is just incredible.
And how would you say when you're peaceful or in the work that you do, coaching others,
Mm.
how do you bring peace to others? How do you help others find that same peace?
So a lot of it has to do with learning, bringing in self-awareness to learn how to accept, process, and release emotions and whatever is coming up. So a lot of the times when we experience any sort of emotion or sensation and we feel it rise in our bodies and we don't like it, maybe it's anxiety or it's anger or it's something that we don't really want to experience, we tend to shove it down and just pretend it's not there and, force it down. I'm trying to feel okay. And it doesn't go away when we do that. So a lot of the work with healing and with accepting what is coming through, like for me, so much of the work was accepting, okay, I do have bipolar, and how can I learn to work with this instead of like pretending it's not there or wishing it away, because that's never going to work. It's accepting what's coming up, finding really practical ways to process whatever it is that's coming up, and allowing them to flow their course and release. So I find so much of what's relevant with anxiety is that we're so worried about the future, and we're so fixated on the thoughts that are ruminating in our minds, and we're not actually learning to process and release what's going on. So a lot of the work to bring back in that peace is this process of learning to release emotions and come back into the present moment and into what is really truly here right now. And a lot of that can be done, you kind of asked about the top 3. Nature is definitely on there. Yoga is a huge part of that as well, because a lot of what yoga is feeling into the sensations in your body, returning to what is real. And when you start to do that, you start to learn about how certain emotions feel physiologically and how can you move those through your body and release them so that you can come back into this present moment, into feeling sensations, into accepting what is real and true right here, ease and that peace.
Absolutely. As a Reiki master, and even recently, one of my guests, who is a very world-renowned, widely known Reiki master, said that
Mm.
about emotions, and being anger, you're in the past. Anxiety is the future. But when you're
Mm.
present, that's when you're grateful. When you're present, that's when you
Mm-hmm.
are at peace. When you find that ease. So there is a lot to be said about not keeping those emotions bottled in, and so many people were like, "Well, how do I get rid of the anger?" And to your point, you can do
Mm.
yoga, or you can take a hike, or you can get those emotions out in those ways. So I totally understand and can agree with 100%. And when you're working with somebody, what do you find to be the most successful way to help someone get through like an anxiety or a panic attack? What's a trick that we can all kind of add to our toolbox, so to speak?
So every person is different, of course, but I find the most simple techniques to be the most effective. And, when someone's really struggling with anxiety, it's like, okay, well, it's not just going to go away if we stop thinking about it. So let's dive into what's actually going on. Where are these thoughts coming from? What is the fear? Okay, what happens if that plays out? Okay, now what's best case scenario? Realistically, whatever happens is going to fall somewhere in between. So how can we work on accepting that we cannot control that? Let's return to our breath, feel into what is real in this moment, bring them back into the present moment, because you still need to process whatever it is that was coming up. So I feel like a lot of times when someone is anxious, there's this idea that you could just say, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. And it's like, well, actually, I'm still going to worry about it, and I'm still playing out these worst case scenarios in my mind. So it's like, well, let's allow that to play out to some degree. Like, what are we afraid of? What's best case scenario? Where's the middle ground? And how can we work on accepting that something is going to happen that is out of our control, and let's bring our attention back into our bodies, into our breaths, into this present moment. And of course, some people handle that better than others. And panic attack, that's a little bit different, because it is this state of, I feel like I'm going to die. And
Yes.
sometimes slowing down the breath can be really helpful, but sometimes actually actively moving your body, like doing jumping jacks, or something that you really need to start breathing deeply and starting to come back into your body, because you can't really do jumping jacks while you're feeling like you're going to die, but it is helping you to release that fight or flight emotion that we experience in those places of panic. Obviously, removing yourself from the situation where the panic is being induced as well, if that's something that you don't feel like, your nervous system doesn't feel like you can handle in that moment. But so much of it is returning to breath and returning to the present moment, which becomes easier with practice, bringing in that mindfulness, feeling into what is real in this moment and what can we actually control, and how can we accept what we can't control.
That is very helpful. That is something that has come up several times as someone who does have the panic attacks, and they are awful. And I do have the anxiety attacks from time to time, and they are awful as well. And the breathing does help, and also there are times where it's like, if I feel anxiety coming on, I go for a walk. It's the first thing I do. It's like, okay, I need a change of scenery. I need to get my mind clear, and that is that's just being reinforced by some of the things that you're saying, is that you got to get up, you got to move, you got to get back into your body. So, so that is wonderful. And what has there been in the last few, I guess, months or weeks? What has been something that has come up for you that really makes you stop and say, "Wow, that brought me a lot of peace"?
My first instinct was to just say watching the sunrise this morning.
You know
I
what?
just
That's a
feel I feel
beautiful
so at
thing.
ease. Yeah. Just sitting and watching the world turn. And again, it's one of those things that anchors you into the present moment, and that there's nowhere else you want to be but just, staring and rising over it. It's just those profound moments of simplicity that bring such peace and ease to my day.
I would have to say I agree. There's that is so true. I just want to say hi to Michael. Welcome. He is out there saying hi. Um, I totally agree. I love to watch the sunrise when I go for my morning walk. That makes me the happiest. There is something to say about, like, when I leave my house to go for my walk, it's usually very dark, and I do take time to appreciate the stars as well, and the moon when she's out.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So there is something to be said. Michael and I have a friend who goes and makes sure she watches and takes pictures of the sunrise, no matter where is at in the world, and takes pictures every morning.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
I love that. I love that. I love that dedication when, especially to, there are times where it's really cold here in New York, and I'll skip the walk and just do something in in the house to exercise. But there's something to be said about a beautiful sunrise for sure. So, one of the questions I love to speak to is, what's in your toolbox? So we've kind of addressed this, but I would like to know if there's like a 5 minute like trick that you have discovered, either in during a panic attack, which is, as we both know, is really, really bad, or during an anxiety attack, or when you feel really low. Just, you can pick one of these or all of these, but what's your go-to? It's like, okay, I'm feeling really low. I don't know necessarily why. And you're just like, I need to get out of this funk. what is the one thing that you think you can share with us in 5 minutes or less? What's the one thing you would say, okay, I got to pull this out?
Yeah. So I'm all about preventative medicine, and I actually haven't had a panic attack in quite a few years now, since I've started really prioritizing my mental wellness. I still, of course, experience anxiety from time to time, like any human being who's predisposed to those sorts of things. But really, I have a whole lifestyle that's healing and preventative medicine. So I can speak really briefly about what I call my 7 pillars of mental health, and then I'll give more of a tangible what I use at the moment when I'm starting to feel anxious. So, my 7 pillars that are all about prevention are exercise, sleep, meditation and mindfulness, nutrition, connection with nature and connection with source, divinity, God, whatever you want to call it, connection with other humans and community, and good old fashioned self-care, which can look different for every person, but might mean, taking that time for yourself, reading your book, whatever it is. So these are the things that I uphold every single day as my priorities for how I live my life. Now, at the moment, the thing that, because I'm living near the ocean, the thing that really helps me change the switch really quickly. If I'm feeling anxious, I'm overthinking about something, I'm feeling low energy, my partner and I will say, I need to go get dunked. And basically what that means is I just need to get in the ocean. I need to have that refresh, that grounding, that really tangible sensation of being in the ocean, feeling the waves on me, immersing myself in the salt water. And it's a really quick fix for me. I'll go in, feeling unsure about something, overthinking something, feeling anxious, questioning my entire life. And I come out and I'm like, oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine again. We're good.
Water is that powerful. It definitely is that
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I love that. Now, so when you're working with people and you're using these pillars and using and sharing these techniques, what do you find that brings you the most peace when helping others?
I get the most peace when I witness their empowerment and their even slight transformation. When people start to speak about themselves more highly, when people start to feel proud about themselves for the work that they're doing, the action they're taking on their healing journey, when people come to me and say, "Oh, I've done this and this and this and it felt really good, and I'm still struggling with this, but I'm proud of myself for taking these steps." I feel like a proud mom. I feel so peaceful, and this is be doing that path. Feels so good to empower other people to take their healing into their own hands.
I love that. I love that. And thank you, Carleigh, so much for sharing all of the tips and tricks that you have up your sleeve and your 7 pillars. I love that. I love that. And if you want to know more about Carleigh's 7 pillars, you can always go to her website, and that's in the description, the Manas Mastery. And also, I would just like to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, your busy morning, as it's just starting there near the lovely Australian coast. Um, you're taking the time to be with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Janice. It's been my pleasure. I love talking about peace, wellness, and healing, and I love that your podcast really highlights what it means to be at peace. It's so beautiful. So yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, just a quick note for everyone joining us. Do you work primarily locally, or is it primarily virtually? Just so if someone's reaching out to you, they're here in the States, can they still reach out to you?
100%. I work predominantly online. There are people in the local area who have requested that we do in-person sessions. And of course, that's fine if you're in my local area, but most of my work is all online.
Beautiful, beautiful. So if you are looking for a holistic alternative to cope with bipolar, depression, anxiety, or you just that scattered brain, do reach out to Carleigh. And if you are interested in van life, maybe they can reach out and get some pointers on that one too.
Absolutely. Of course.
Beautiful. And thank you again, Carleigh. I'm going to put you in the green room. I'll be right back. So I want to again thank you all for joining Carleigh and I and talking about peace. And don't forget, we have a new episode on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. I look forward to seeing all of you then. Have a great night.